When someone ignores you, it's not the silence that hurts. It's the story you start to tell yourself about why. Imagine this. You've sent a message, you've made the effort, and all you get in return is nothing. No reply, no acknowledgement, just a deafening silence that feels like a weight pressing against your chest. It's like shouting into a void, where your voice fades, leaving behind nothing but the echo of your own doubt. And in that silence, your mind becomes its worst enemy, crafting narratives about what they're thinking, what you did wrong, or worse, why you're not enough. But here's the truth. Their silence is not about you, it's about them. The question is, do you have the strength to see it for what it really is? There's an old saying, sometimes the loudest screams are the ones you'll never hear. When they ignore you, it's not just silence. It's a deliberate act of communication. Their lack of response is a message, often louder than any words they could have said. The question is, what are they really trying to say? Do you want to find that out? And let me be real, it's going to hurt. But that pain, we're not running from it. We're going to take it, shape it, and convert it into fuel. Fuel to rise above, stronger and more unshakable than ever. So, are you ready for this transformation? If you are, go ahead and press that like button under this video right now, because this journey starts here. Let's dive in and uncover the truth together. So folks, let's face it. In the moments you're ignored, your mind spirals into overdrive. You dissect every interaction, every word exchanged, trying to find the moment you lost their attention. But do you know what they're expecting from you at this moment? They're expecting a broken heart, a soul that shatters under the weight of their silence. They're counting on your spirit to crumble, to reach out desperately, clinging to their approval like a lifeline. Picture this, a puppeteer holding the strings, watching you dance to the silent tune of their indifference. They think their absence will leave you gasping for air, searching for answers, begging for acknowledgement. To them, this silence isn't just an absence, it's control. It's a game, and they believe they hold all the cards. But here's the twist. The very silence they use to break you can become the fire that fuels your strength. Their indifference doesn't have to define you, it can redefine you, because while they're expecting a shattered heart, you have the power to show them something they never saw coming, a heart that thrives in the silence, a soul that rebuilds itself stronger, and a mind that no longer spirals but soars. There's a saying, the same boiling water that softens the potato hardens the egg. It's not about the circumstances, it's about what you're made of. When they ignore you, they expect you to be the potato, crumbling under the pressure. But this is your chance to be the egg, unbreakable, hardened, and resolute. Their silence? It becomes your forge, where you shape yourself into something they can no longer manipulate or control. What they're really doing when they ignore you is revealing their own limitations. It's not your worth in question. It's theirs. They're hiding behind the walls of silence because they lack the courage to confront what's real, to confront you. And here's the truth they won't admit. Their silence is less about punishing you and more about protecting themselves from their own insecurities. Now, ask yourself, will you give them the satisfaction of seeing you break? Or will you use this as your moment to rise? Because when you turn their silence into your power, you don't just reclaim your self-worth. You show them exactly what they lost when they chose to ignore you. In this video, we'll uncover the psychology behind their silence, what they're truly thinking, why they act this way, and how you can rise above it. Trust me, by the end, you'll not only understand their behavior, but you'll also have the tools to transform their indifference into a source of strength. Let's expose the truth and reclaim the power they never thought you'd have. Here's the truth. You are not the broken heart they expect. You are not the soul crushed by their silence. You are stronger than they could ever imagine. Their silence isn't your defeat. It's their choice, their narrative, and their loss. So, today, take a stand. Refuse to let their indifference define your worth. Declare it loud and clear. I am whole, I am enough, and I will not chase validation from those who cannot see my value. If you're ready to reclaim your power, drop the affirmation, "I choose myself," in the comments below. Let this be the moment you stop questioning your worth and start owning your story. Together, let's rewrite the script and remind the world that your strength lies in knowing who you are, even in the face of silence. Stay strong, stay grounded, and keep moving forward. And now, let me show you what exactly they are thinking and how you have to rise above. Number 1. You will beg, cry, and then move on. Crying isn't weakness, it's proof that you cared. Moving on isn't forgetting, it's proof that you learned. There's a moment we all fear, isn't there? That moment when everything inside you shatters. The texts you send go unanswered. The calls you make are ignored. You find yourself begging, not just for them to come back, but for the pain to stop, for the ache to fade. And when it doesn't, you cry. Oh, you cry until it feels like the tears will never run dry. But here's the thing, no one tells you. This storm, it's not the end, it's the beginning of something extraordinary. Because after the begging and after the tears, there's a quiet strength that starts to rise within you. You move on, not because it's easy, not because you forget, but because you realize you have no choice but to reclaim yourself. When you beg, it feels like surrender, doesn't it? You give away your dignity in hopes that they'll notice, that they'll see the depth of your love and the weight of your pain. But let's be real, they're not noticing. They're watching. They're calculating. They're comfortable knowing that you're the one bending, the one breaking, while they hold all the power. And then you cry. You cry because it feels like there's nothing left. You cry because you've poured everything into someone who couldn't or wouldn't meet you halfway. It's like staring at a glass you spent years filling with love and trust, only to watch it shatter on the floor. Every tear feels like another piece of you slipping away. But let me tell you something, tears are not a sign of defeat. They're proof that you cared enough to feel deeply. Here's where the real shift happens. When the tears stop, you're left with a choice. You can stay in the wreckage, staring at the broken pieces, or you can stand up, brush yourself off, and start picking up what's left of you. Because here's the truth. They don't get to decide your worth. You do. Moving on isn't a straight line. It's messy. It's waking up one day feeling free, only to crumble the next because a song, a smell, or a memory pulls you back. It's fighting the urge to check their social media, to send just one more text, to hold on to a connection that's already gone. But every time you resist, that's strength, that's growth, that's you taking your power back, one small step at a time. Think of it like a phoenix rising from the ashes. The fire that burns you now is the same fire that will transform you. It's not easy, it's excruciating, but it's necessary. You're shedding the parts of you that needed their validation, their attention, their love, and what's left? A version of you that knows their worth doesn't hinge on someone else's ability to see it. Begging, crying, moving on. It's a process, and it's not linear. But let me be clear, moving on doesn't mean you didn't love them. It doesn't mean the memories won't still sting. It means you've chosen to stop living in the shadow of what was and start embracing the possibility of what could be. So, if you're in the middle of the storm right now, hear me out. It's okay to beg. It's okay to cry, but don't stay there. You owe it to yourself to move on. Not for them, not to prove a point, but for you, to rediscover the person you were before their silence, their rejection, their indifference tried to convince you that you weren't enough. Here's your affirmation. I am rising. Write it in the comments below. Say it out loud. Claim it. Because every tear, every broken moment, every step you take away from the pain is a step closer to the version of you that doesn't just survive, they thrive. And if this resonates, if this feels like the reminder you needed today, press that like button. You're not alone in this journey. You're not the only one who has begged, cried, and wondered if they'd ever feel whole again. But let me tell you, you will. Stay with me, because this isn't the end of your story. This is just the chapter where you rediscover how powerful, how resilient, and how irreplaceable you truly are. Keep watching, because what's coming next will show you exactly how to turn this pain into the fuel that will carry you to heights you never thought possible. The tears will dry, the scars will heal, and you will rise. Just wait and see. Number 2, you will understand them because they expect you to always care. Sometimes people don't push you away because they don't care. They push you away because they're terrified you'll see the parts of them they're not ready to face. Well, folks, let's get one thing straight. It's not always about the fact that they don't care. It might just be that they're at war with someone inside, battling demons they haven't figured out how to conquer. But here's the kicker. They expect you to always care, no matter how cold their silence feels. They lean on the idea that you'll bend, that you'll twist yourself into knots, trying to understand the very struggles they refuse to share with you. It's as if they've locked themselves in a room with their insecurities, fears, and doubts, and they've thrown away the key. And you're standing on the other side of the door, knocking, pleading to be let in, while they pretend not to hear. But here's the hard truth. They hear you. Oh, they hear you loud and clear. They're just not ready to open that door, because doing so would mean showing you the cracks in their facade, the vulnerability they're so desperate to hide. The silence leaves you guessing, doesn't it? You start spinning your wheels, coming up with explanations for their behavior. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they're scared. Maybe, just maybe, they're not ready to handle what you bring to the table. And while some of that might be true, there's a darker side you can't ignore. What if they're avoiding you on purpose? What if they're lying to themselves and to you? Now, this is where the fear creeps in. What if their silence isn't about inner battles, but about avoiding accountability? What if they're using your compassion, your understanding, as a safety net? They know you care. They know you'll stay. And that gives them the freedom to pull away without ever explaining themselves. It's like being stranded in a storm while they hold the umbrella, choosing not to share it, and you're left there, soaking wet, hoping they'll eventually decide to let you in out of the rain. But what if they never do? What if their silence is their way of testing your limits, seeing how far they can push before you finally break? Imagine someone knocking on your door day after day, trying to understand you, trying to help you through your struggles. Now imagine choosing to ignore them, not because you don't need their help, but because you're too afraid to let them in. That's what they're doing to you. Their silence isn't just about protecting themselves. It's about seeing if you'll keep standing there, knocking, waiting, hoping, and as long as you do, they'll never feel the need to face what's inside. But here's where you take back your power. You stop standing at that door. You stop knocking. You stop waiting for someone who isn't ready or willing to meet you halfway. Because your worth isn't measured by how much you care about someone who refuses to open up. It's measured by how much you care about yourself. Here's your affirmation for today. I choose me. Write it in the comments right now. Let the world know you're done waiting for someone who expects you to do all the emotional labor while they sit in their silence. And if this is resonating with you, press that like button, because this message isn't just for you. It's for anyone who's tired of being left outside in the rain. Stay tuned, because we're about to dive deeper into what's really going on behind their silence. What are they avoiding? What are they hiding? And how do you make sure you're not the one carrying all the weight? Keep watching, because what's coming next might just change the way you see yourself and them forever. Number 3, you will stay, no matter how badly they treat you. When someone ignores you, they think you will stay. They think you'll tolerate the silence, the disregard, the disrespect. Because why wouldn't you? After all, you've always been there, haven't you? This is the twisted logic they operate on. They ignore your calls, your messages, your presence, not because they don't know you're trying, but because they've convinced themselves that you'll always stay. They've built this illusion of control, believing that no matter how little they give, you'll be there, waiting, hoping, clinging. And why wouldn't they think that? You've proven it to them time and time again. When they pulled away, you stepped closer. When they were cold, you brought warmth. When they ignored you, you stayed. They see your loyalty not as a strength, but as something they can exploit. But let's be honest, how many times have you allowed them to treat you this way? How many nights have you stayed awake, waiting for a reply that never came? How many days have you carried the weight of their silence, telling yourself, maybe tomorrow they'll care? And how many times have you excused their behavior, convincing yourself that they're just busy, just overwhelmed, just anything but indifferent to you? The truth is, every time you stay, every time you tolerate their neglect, you teach them one thing, that they can treat you this way and you won't leave, that they can ignore you and you'll still be there. It's not fair, is it, to love someone so deeply only to have them take that love for granted? But here's where the shift begins. Here's where you take back your power. Because staying, it's not always the noble choice. Sometimes staying is a form of surrender, a way of giving them permission to keep hurting you. And let me tell you this, your worth is not defined by how much pain you can endure for someone else's comfort. Imagine this, a beautiful plant thriving under the care of someone who waters it, nurtures it, gives it sunlight. Now imagine that same plant left in the dark, unwatered, neglected. Does it stay alive out of loyalty? No. It withers. It fades. It dies. You are that plant. You cannot thrive in the darkness of someone's indifference. You cannot keep pouring yourself into a relationship where you are the only one giving. They expect you to stay because they don't think you'll realize this. They think their silence, their coldness, their neglect won't break you because you've always been the one to hold on. But here's the truth. Staying in the face of their mistreatment is not loyalty. It's self-betrayal. And what if you didn't stay? What if, instead of waiting for their attention, you gave yourself the love and care you've been giving them? What if you chose to walk away, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself more? Here's where the fear kicks in for them. The moment you stop staying, the moment you start valuing yourself, their world shifts. They lose the comfort of knowing you're always there. They lose the safety net you've provided. And that's when they'll realize they didn't just ignore someone who cared, they ignored someone who was irreplaceable. But that realization doesn't matter if you're still standing there, waiting for them to change. Change doesn't happen in the space of comfort. It happens in the space of loss. When you leave, when you stop tolerating their treatment, that's when they'll be forced to confront their actions. Here's your affirmation for today. I deserve more. Write it in the comments right now. Let it be your declaration that you will no longer stay where you are not valued. And if this message resonates with you, press that like button. Let this be the reminder you need to stop tolerating the intolerable. Because here's the thing, they will continue to ignore you as long as you let them, but the moment you choose to walk away, the moment you say, no more, is the moment you reclaim your power. You were never meant to stay in places where you're undervalued. You were meant to thrive in spaces where your light is celebrated. So, are you ready to stop staying for them and start choosing for you? Because that's the choice that changes everything. Let's dive deeper, because what's coming next will show you exactly how to break free from their expectations and embrace the freedom you deserve. Stay strong. You're worth so much more than this. Number 4. You'll keep blaming yourself while they stay silent. When someone ignores you, they think you will take the blame. They expect you to turn inward, to carry the weight of their silence, while they walk away unscathed. It's a cruel trick, isn't it? Their silence becomes the weapon, and your mind becomes the battlefield. They know exactly what their lack of response does to you. They know the spiraling thoughts, the self-doubt, the endless questioning. And yet they stay silent. Why? Because as long as you're blaming yourself, they're free from accountability. Think about it. When someone doesn't explain their behavior, when they don't communicate, they leave a void. And that void, you fill it with your own fears, insecurities, and assumptions. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I should have done more. But let me ask you this. Why is it your responsibility to shoulder the blame for their silence? Why do they get to walk away guilt-free while you stay up at night, dissecting every moment? Here's the harsh truth they don't want you to realize. Their silence says more about them than it ever could about you. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their inability to face the truth, to face you. Imagine a mirror. You hold it up to someone, and suddenly they see themselves for who they really are. Their flaws, their fears, their failures. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? So what do? They break the mirror, or, in this case, they ignore you. They leave you holding the shards, bleeding, while they walk away without so much as a backward glance. But here's the thing. You don't deserve to bleed for someone who can't even face their own reflection. You see, when they stay silent, they're hoping you'll internalize the guilt. They want you to believe it's your fault, that you did something wrong, because it's easier for them than admitting their own shortcomings. It's easier for them to let you carry the weight than to take responsibility for their actions, or lack of them. And you? You're left in the ruins, questioning everything. You think, If I could just figure out what I did wrong, maybe I can fix it. But here's the hard truth. You didn't break this. They did. And it's not your job to repair what they're too cowardly to address. Picture this. You're carrying a backpack filled with rocks. Every unanswered question, every moment of silence, every ounce of blame you place on yourself is another rock added to the load. Meanwhile, they're walking free, unburdened, because you've taken it all on yourself. How much longer can you carry that weight? At some point, you have to put the backpack down. You have to say, "This isn't mine to carry," because it's not. Their silence, that's their burden, not yours. Their inability to communicate, that's their failure, not yours. And let me tell you something else. Blaming yourself won't bring them back. It won't change their behavior. It won't fill the silence. All it will do is keep you trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and pain. So, what do? You stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and start asking, "Why am I allowing this?" You take back the narrative. You stop letting their silence define your worth. Here's your affirmation. I release the blame. Write it in the comments below. Let this be your moment to let go of the guilt, to put down the weight you've been carrying for far too long. And if this message is hitting home, press that like button. Because you're not alone in this. We've all been there, blaming ourselves for someone else's silence. But together, we can break free. Remember this, their silence isn't your story, it's theirs. And you have the power to walk away from it. You have the power to stop blaming yourself for their inability to show up. Stay strong, because what's coming next will show you how to turn this pain into power. You don't have to carry this anymore. You can and will rise above it. Let's keep going, because your journey to reclaiming your worth has just begun. Number 5. You'll keep reaching out, feeding their ego. When someone ignores you, they think you'll keep chasing. They think you'll keep handing them the power. One message, one call, one desperate attempt at connection at a time. It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? You reach out, they stay silent. You send another message, thinking maybe this time they'll respond. But the truth? They're not just ignoring you, they're feeding off your effort. Every unanswered text, every missed call, every attempt to reconnect gives them one thing: control. They know exactly what they're doing. Their silence isn't an accident, it's a strategy. They leave you hanging because it keeps the focus on them. It's like dangling a carrot in front of a rabbit, always just out of reach. You keep chasing, and they keep feeling more and more validated by your pursuit. And while you're sitting there, pouring your energy into someone who refuses to reciprocate, what are they doing? They're watching, they're calculating, they're enjoying the fact that they hold all the cards, that they can stay silent while you do all the work. Let's be real, reaching out feels like the only option, doesn't it? You tell yourself, if I just explain myself, maybe they'll understand. Or, if I keep trying, they'll see how much I care. But the hard truth is this: the more you chase, the less they'll value you. Imagine this: a bird in a cage. The door is wide open, but the bird doesn't leave. Why? Because the person holding the cage keeps throwing in crumbs, just enough to keep the bird dependent, but never enough to truly satisfy. That's what they're doing to you. Every now and then they might throw you a crumb, a like on your post, a short reply, a casual "miss you," but it's not real. It's just enough to keep you hooked, to keep you chasing. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. Why are you chasing someone who's running away? Why are you feeding their ego when they're starving your soul? Every time you reach out, you give them a piece of yourself. And let me tell you something, they don't deserve it. They don't deserve the energy, the effort, the love you're pouring into them while they sit back and do nothing. Here's what they don't want you to realize. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop reaching out, is the moment their power crumbles. Their ego thrives on your attention. Take that away, and what are they left with? The reality of their own emptiness. Think about it. If they truly cared, would you have to chase them? If they truly valued you, would they be so comfortable ignoring you? The answer is simple: no. But here's the thing. They've gotten used to you being the one who always tries. They've built their sense of importance on the foundation of your effort. When you pull back, when you stop reaching out, it forces them to confront the fact that they were never as in control as they thought. It's not easy, I know. Stopping feels like giving up, like you're abandoning something you care deeply about. But here's the truth. Walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. It's saying, I refuse to keep feeding someone who won't even acknowledge me. And let me tell you something powerful. The silence you give them will speak louder than anything you could ever say. It's not revenge, it's respect. Respect for yourself, for your time, and for your energy. Here's your affirmation. I choose silence. Write it in the comments right now. Let this be your commitment to stop feeding someone else's ego at the expense of your own peace. And if this resonates with you, press that like button. Let this be the moment you take back your power, the moment you stop reaching out and start reaching inward. Because here's the truth, their ego doesn't define you, their silence doesn't diminish you, and their inability to appreciate you doesn't reflect your worth. Stay strong, because what's coming next will show you exactly how to turn this dynamic around. You don't have to chase anyone to prove your value. You are enough, exactly as you are. And the moment you realize that is the moment everything changes. Keep watching, because this is your time to rise. Number 6. You'll break before they have to take accountability. When someone avoids accountability, they rely on you to break first. They count on your silence turning into self-doubt, your patience turning into frustration, and your resolve crumbling under the weight of their neglect. It's a cruel strategy, isn't it? They know they've hurt you, ignored you, left you hanging in emotional limbo. They know there's a conversation waiting to be had, a truth that needs to come out. But instead of facing it, they hide behind their silence, hoping you'll crack under the pressure. Because if you break first, if you're the one who shatters, they never have to take responsibility for the damage they've done. Imagine this. You're holding a rope in a tug of war. On the other end is the accountability they're avoiding. The harder you pull, asking for clarity, for closure, for honesty, the more they let the rope slacken, forcing you to bear all the tension. Eventually, your hands start to burn, your grip weakens, and you're left wondering, why am I the only one holding on? But that's the point. They're counting on you to drop the rope, because as long as you're the one who breaks, they get to keep their hands clean. They get to avoid the uncomfortable truth of their actions and shift the focus back onto you. Suddenly, it's not about what they did wrong. It's about how you couldn't handle it. Here's the reality they don't want you to see. Accountability is heavy. It requires self-awareness, honesty, and the courage to admit when you've caused harm. Not everyone is willing or capable of carrying that weight. So, instead of stepping up, they deflect. They let you bear the emotional load, knowing full well it's breaking you. And here's where the real damage happens. You start to believe it's your fault. Their silence becomes your failure. Their avoidance becomes your inadequacy. You tell yourself, if I could just be stronger, more understanding, less emotional, maybe they'd step up. But let me tell you something. You could bend yourself into every shape imaginable, and it still wouldn't make them take responsibility. Because accountability isn't something you can force. It's a choice. And if they're not choosing it now, what makes you think they'll choose it later? Think of it like a broken mirror. You can stand there all day, holding up the pieces, trying to fit them back together. But until the other person takes their piece and starts repairing it with you, all you're doing is cutting yourself on the shards. So, what happens if you stop breaking? What happens if, instead of falling apart, you step back and let them face the mess they've created? I'll tell you what happens. The dynamic shifts. They're left with no one to deflect onto, no one to blame, no one to hide behind. It's terrifying for them, and that's why they avoid it. Because accountability forces them to confront the person they've been, the person who hurt you, ignored you, and let you down. And let's be honest, not everyone has the courage to look in that mirror. But here's the truth you need to hear. Their inability to take accountability is not your responsibility. You are not obligated to carry their emotional baggage, to hold their hand while they avoid the consequences of their actions. You've already done enough. You've tried to communicate, to understand, to fix what was broken. Now it's their turn. And if they're unwilling to meet you halfway, that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their fear. Here's your affirmation. I won't break. Write it in the comments below. Let this be your declaration that you will no longer carry the weight of someone else's avoidance. And if this message resonates, press that like button. Let this be the reminder you need to stop breaking for someone who refuses to step up. Because here's the reality. You can't make someone take accountability, but you can choose to stop breaking for them. You can choose to walk away from the rope, the broken mirror, the constant cycle of trying and failing to fix what they refuse to face. Stay strong, because what's coming next will show you exactly how to rise above their avoidance and reclaim your power. You are not their scapegoat. You are not their emotional punching bag. You are someone who deserves honesty, accountability, and respect. And if they can't give you that, you have every right to walk away without breaking first. Number 7. You'll wait forever while they do nothing. When someone makes you wait, it's not always because they need time. Sometimes it's because they expect you to stay right where you are while they do nothing at all. Waiting. It feels noble at first, doesn't it? You convince yourself they just need a little space, a little time, and things will fall back into place. But here's the reality they don't want you to see. While you're standing still, waiting for them to make a move, they're not moving. They're not changing, not growing, not even trying to meet you halfway. And the longer you wait, the more they assume you always will. Imagine a game of chess. You've made your move, and now it's their turn. You sit there, staring at the board, anticipating their next move. But they don't touch a single piece. They sit back, arms crossed, watching as you wait. Hours turn into days, and still nothing. But here's the cruel twist. They're not even playing the game anymore. They've left the board entirely, while you're stuck, holding your breath, hoping for a resolution that will never come. This is what happens when you wait for someone who doesn't value your time. They leave you in a limbo of unanswered questions and unfulfilled expectations, all while carrying on as if nothing's wrong. They expect you to keep holding on, to keep hoping, to keep waiting, because waiting puts the power in their hands. And let's be honest, how many times have you waited for someone to text back, to apologize, to show you they care? How many nights have you spent checking your phone, replaying conversations in your head, wondering if today will be the day they finally do something? And how many times has that day come and gone with nothing but silence? The hard truth is this: when someone makes you wait, it's often because they're comfortable with the idea that you'll always be there. They're not rushing to fix things because they don't fear losing you. They think your loyalty is a given, that your patience is infinite, and that you'll wait as long as it takes for them to decide, for them to care, for them to grow up. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. How long are you willing to wait for someone who isn't even trying? How long will you put your life on hold for someone who has no intention of moving forward? Because waiting forever isn't love. It's self-abandonment. Think of it like a train station. You're standing on the platform waiting for a train that's running late. At first, you're patient. It'll be here soon, you tell yourself, but hours pass and there's still no sign of it. Eventually, you realize the train isn't coming. It never was. And while you've been waiting, life has been passing you by. That's the reality you face when you wait for someone who isn't invested. Every moment you spend waiting is a moment you lose. Time you could have spent building yourself up, chasing your own dreams, and finding someone who values your time as much as you value theirs. But here's the shift. You don't have to wait forever. You don't have to sit on that platform, hoping for a train that will never arrive. You have the power to step off, to leave the station, to walk away from the endless cycle of waiting for someone who isn't moving. And let me tell you what happens when you stop waiting. The balance shifts. Suddenly, they're the ones left wondering. They're the ones who have to decide if they're willing to step up. And if they don't, then you've saved yourself from wasting any more time on someone who wasn't willing to invest in you. Here's your affirmation. I won't wait. Write it in the comments right now. Let this be your declaration that your time is too valuable to be spent waiting for someone who doesn't respect it. And if this message resonates, press that like button. Let this be the moment you choose yourself over the endless waiting game. Because here's the truth. You are not a placeholder. You are not someone's backup plan. You deserve to be with someone who moves toward you, not someone who keeps you standing still. Waiting forever isn't a sign of love. It's a sign that you're giving more than you're receiving. Remember this. Your worth isn't tied to someone's silence, indifference, or inability to step up. You are not here to beg, cry, chase, or wait forever. You are here to reclaim your power, to choose yourself, and to rise above their lack of effort. So today, make the decision to stop tolerating less than you deserve. If this message resonated with you, press that like button and drop the affirmation, I choose me, in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are the prize. Stay strong, stay grounded, and never settle for less than your worth.